Welcome to the show,
Hi,
Jonathan.
Julia.
Hi again,
Hi.
Jordan.
Hi, how are
I
we?
brought I brought the brains with me. I brought the brains and Superman. I call him Superman, but I brought the brains with me. We ready to
Let's
go?
let's roll.
Let's do it. Okay, so I'm gonna go through some slides. I think it's good to kind of show some stuff, and then the majority of us I'm gonna leave time for Jordan to go through an actual demo and show some stuff. So, what we are. My name is Jonathan. This is Jordan. I'm the head of growth for Momentum. Jordan, you are what's your official title now? Super Solutions Expert Leader.
Sales engineer here at Momentum.
Super senior. And we do what's called enterprise listening orchestrated. So we're going to be talking about what is that like, and give you some overview of stuff. I promise I'll take no longer than 5 minutes, and Jordan needs you to time me. All right. So what we hear in the marketplace, or what we're seeing, is a couple of main problems that all stem to this one thing, which is, as you well know, being on this webinar today, humans is the data source. This seems to be the crux of a lot of problems. When you have a conversation or email that has 4 to 8,000 words, and then only 25 of those get to the CRM or gets to a Slack message or whatever, obviously that causes issues like C-suite, sales leaders, enablement, and product and marketing do not have the information they need. And what we're seeing is that's creating what we're calling the execution crisis, where three main problems happen, which is there's efficiency gap. Anyone who is in sales or CS knows this, but you're asked to do a lot of tasks as well as a lot of data entry, which means a lot of your time from Forrester, Gartner, Deloitte, McKinsey, anywhere you look is like wasted on non-revenue generating tasks. And then 83% of the insights are just missed because of obviously it lives in someone's brain versus in somewhere you can access. And that's the second problem is that data is siloed either in someone's brain or it's in a tool like Gong and Gmail and Salesforce, all of which are amazing tools. They're just not readily available to be, cross communicate different data points. And then lastly, as a result of this, you have inside analysis loss, which means leaders, enablement, RevOps, whoever, even reps themselves do not have what they need to really execute on what's actually happening. So we believe there's three pillars that kind of make a big difference with this. I'm going to get into this by showing how what we have right now with the legacy tools. Again, there's nothing wrong with these tools. I use all of these. I'm a big fan of Make and Zapier with automations. I'm a huge fan of the tools on the left with conversation intelligence. I've bought and rolled out all of them. The challenge is that the with CI tools classically, they don't currently structure data and trigger action. They do a really good job of analyzing calls, but then it just sits there and doesn't take any action or do anything with it with Zapier and Make and all these other agent builders, which are amazing. They are anyone who's tried to do this across an organization, they're a little bit fragile. You have to keep up with the changes of the models, and then you have to all the changes of like your Salesforce changing daily because of new field or whatever process change. And then as enablement, I've seen how people try to get this so people can do things better or faster, and that fails because humans are busy trying to talk to customers. So we think there's three pillars. The first one is having a first-party data structured provider that's clean, usable, and more importantly, it takes the weight off of the reps to be able to focus on the conversation rather than focusing on data entry or menial process tasks. And then being able to take those and automatically communicate that across the entire organization from leaders down to the reps. So the right signal gets to the right person at the right time that's clean and consistent and unbiased. As anyone knows, in leadership, bad news travels slow. And obviously, if you have something like a churn or a deals in risk, you want to know about that sooner than later, not to get someone in trouble, but to support them and make sure you can save it and make a good thing out of it. And then lastly is orchestration, which is the thing I've been geeking out lately. Forrester just released a report about this. This is what Momentum's been doing for years around orchestrating AI agents and automation to take action for you. So again, you can take some weight off of the rep to do this. And this is what makes up Momentum. And this is kind of what I want to set up Jordan for is making sure this is a holistic view of making sure all these data points are connected. And then you have benefits like this where RevOps gets more forecasting accuracy, enablement gets methodology adoption, there's churn risk or upsell notices. There's all sorts of benefits that come as a result that can help with all these different, I'm going to zip through these real quick, all these different use cases per team. So there's so much data that sits inside of the conversations that once it's structured and clean can have a lot of benefits for teams. With that being said, look at that. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Jordan's turn. Bam.
Right on the money. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yep.
I'm going to go ahead and showcase a couple of things. And the first of them actually is a bit about the momentum infrastructure, because I think that's one of the most agentic parts of the platform, because it's going to be ultimately what we derive value from in everything else. As we know, junk in, junk out. And so with momentum, we actually treat the data as the ultimate product. right? So you're having these customer interactions on calls, emails, and service tickets, and so on. And what we typically see in the marketplace, or what we have in the last couple of years, is sort of a path towards I take these vectors of comms and I run them through an LLM, and then I get my output. And luckily for Momentum, we've been doing this for several years now. And so we actually have what we call a GTM data refinery. So think about for every communication that's coming into our systems, running through a standard process of input normalization, applying RAG, applying custom context, and applying multiple stages of QA validation. Now, what that means is every single conversation that is go-to-market focused is going to be something like each other. So think about many calls are going to have objections, are going to have incoming praise and product, and whatever that looks like in terms of your go-to-market cycle. And what Momentum does is actually, for each conversation piece, pull out these pieces of context and then run them through several different cleaning processes in the back end to make sure that whenever we perform any sort of process, like Jonathan's talking about, whenever we want to flag churn risk or whenever we want to flag product feedback or upsell potential, we're not just saying, hey, here's a transcript. Did someone talk about upsell potential? We're actually looking at the individual data points that's coming out. So this lets us do two things in the context of an agent world. When we consider ourselves a true data platform, that means that we're extracting these insights, transforming them in different layers, and loading them into the right spots. And all of this ultimately lets us get at, like I said, two things in the agent landscape. One is being able to pre-build some of your agents inside the Momentum platform itself. So I'll walk through a couple of those today, but I want to touch high level on the other pattern that we're seeing emerge. When you have the data being the first class citizen, the first class product, you actually have high quality information to train your agents. So everyone that we're talking to in the mid-market and up has someone on a go-to-market engineer or data science teams who all want to be able to leverage high quality go-to-market data. But when they try to import through this process we're talking about before, it's archaic. It becomes very, very difficult to parse through all that information. And so by having the enrichment of the service tickets and having the enrichment of the CRM and having the enrichment of all of these custom data points along the way, ultimately what they're able to do is train their agents, right? They're able to see the exact data set that they need and perform whatever task their team is wanting to. So a bit of a dichotomy in terms of how we see Momentum being used, but we'll cover some of the in-house modalities today. So one very, very common modality is something we call customer retention agent. So think about listening, having your ear to the floor for any sort of negative interaction that's happening in your organization and flagging that as it happens. So for us, we get to have the AI make a few decisions, right? So if the customer success manager is managing an account that might be $20,000, maybe this is something that we're sending directly to a CSM and maybe their first line manager. But as we go up market, as we start to see someone who's a $250,000 account, when we actually send this message, it's going to contain different contents that are more specialized to that third level manager, maybe a VP of CS or a VP of sales. And what's going to happen is we can take a couple of actions. One, the AI is going to give us any sort of context that it finds relevant. So think about that being something like, context about the vectors of communication. So if it's a ticket, if it's a call, pulling in all that information and summarizing it in a neat way so that everyone who's reviewing can get up to speed. Two, any sort of direct or indirect mentions of why they're upset, ways we can rectify the situation, objection handling maybe by the rep if it's on the pre-sale side, anything we want to do to really focus in on what is valuable for someone who's trying to work the account and ultimately save the account and drive customer sentiment. And then next we have access to other systems, right? So like Jonathan was saying, sort of the pillar of getting this to the right place at the right time. We have the ability to perform Salesforce actions. So one very common version of this is if the AI rates their sentiment on a 1 out of 5 and the account is above $100,000, we actually create a case for the customer with those exact details that we're highlighting being reflected in that case. So not just are we saying, hey, by the way, someone's upset, we're actually driving action, right? And that's where momentum typically fills in with our in-house agents is we take the data, which is our ultimate product, but then for anything that we're building in terms of agentic workflow and automation, it's always going to be about taking the action and protecting the revenue, growing the revenue, whatever is going to help the GTM work succeed. That's where momentum plugs in. One more example I'll show here of the types of things we do with this first party data. Think about being able to, as a leader, understand across a swath of a week's worth of calls, maybe this is 70 calls, what is happening in the field. So if I'm a VP of sales or a CRO, I'm going to care about what's happening in early stage deals as it relates to identifying a clear problem and making sure that we have a champion identified so that we can solve that problem through the champion internally. But then as we get late stage, maybe I'm focused more on something like, do we have access to an economic buyer? Are we picking up on risks? Are we getting happy years and thinking this is going to close? Or are we actually moving in a direction towards picking this information up? So what momentum is doing in this situation is it's reviewing all of the different interactions that my customer base is having. And it's going through and it's using that first party data set to collect the most relevant information to answer my CRO's questions. And so it's going to come through and it's going to devise not just answers to the direct questions, but there's also space for indirect questions. What are the aggregate trends that we're seeing across the entire pipeline? What are we seeing that's not just, sort of a different paradigm for this is what questions am I not asking? And letting the AI go ahead and parse that information because it's already done the work of aggregating and siloing off the right data set for the problem. And then it's going to go through and piece together the correct recommendations and next steps and high level inconsistencies. Think about seeing summary stats or running close loss analysis, any sort of high level information that I want the AI to pick up on. That's what Momentum's able to do using that data harvesting that we've been talking about for the last half decade. So, Jonathan, anything else to cover before we close?
No, first off, thank you. This is why I brought you because you did much better than I would, which is great. And two, one of our customers said that we think about the concept of democratizing the data and what you can do with it. Not only can you take and load up your CRM or Slack or whatever communication you want to have or your system of record, but because you have good, clean data, like you said, the case created in Salesforce is one example of many. Like another example is our AI can recognize when exit criteria has been met and either serve a button up to the person in Slack and saying, hey, do you want to move stages? Or it'll just do it for them. So it kind of depends on how the organization feels around the interactions between agents. But there's a lot of things you can do just automatically in the background, as well as put the human in the loop and let people interact with it as they'd like to, which is a lot of fun. So the cool thing of Momentum is there's so many flexible things you can do with it. It's just really asking what's the most important thing for your team to move the dial, and that's where we focus. So there you go. How about you,
Amazing
Leah?
demo. Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan and Jonathan. I'm just curious, I guess both of you actually. What's your top favorite use case for CXOs?
Jordan, for sure. I know you got this one.
I love one because we have access to all of the different years and years of data. I personally love being able to go back and find something very straightforward, like what is a competitor's contract end date, or what did we pitch this customer 2 years ago, and how has the experience been as we've attacked that problem. So it's one thing to look forward and say, hey, here's what happened this week. It's another to look through 3 years of that data set and pull out the things that are most interesting. One, in a tactical way, like understanding who I can retarget because now I have access to that information of, what was mentioned 3 years ago. But two, really understanding sort of like you're saying, the customer success experience as we have sort of looked to address the problem and really seeing the full journey is what ultimately is the most fun for me to be a part of.
Really love the tech.
Mm.
We had Mark Roberge yesterday, the retention agent. I don't think I ever saw a retention agent. Do you have any
Mhm.
competitors in that area?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Jonathan, you got it.
Oh no, that you're talking with customer retention specifically?
Yeah.
There's automations, but there's not an act, as far as I know, if there is, if they could very well be, I don't know. There's not a lot. Like, there's not a lot in the customer retention side. However, most of our customers, that's one of their main use cases. And there's two sides. One is we have an agent that will analyze, they'll go back through all the calls over, let's say you have 10 calls over an opportunity and auto create a handoff note and then send that over to CS. They can have that. And number two, um, half our customers use it for retention, not only for churn risk analysis, but also for general sentiment analysis. So it'll score the calls and then also like send either signals to saying we're good, or it'll send a signal saying, hey, we got a chance to upsell. So it's both directions. What's going bad on, also what's going right. And then we can suck out all the different sections and saying what's coming next is when we have what's called essential clips, where the agent will auto clip the videos and saying, not only do we know this, but here's your 30-second clip of when the CSM did a killer job of presenting the new products. Bam, there you go. So like it's
Very
good.
cool.
It's good going into a really, really cool place. But does that answer your question? Hopefully.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
before we transition to our next demo, just I don't know what's the best next step for everybody who's watching.
Come get a demo with Jordan, man. That's what you should do. No, but for real, we would love to have be in consideration for what you're going through. We do have the prompt library, so if no one has not accessed that yet, please go there. It's free. It's 200 plus prompts in the prompt library. In fact, I'm happy to send it to you, Julia. You can send it out, and
Yep.
then come talk to us. Let's do a transformation session and see what we can do to help your team kind of take it to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Jonathan and Jordan.
Thank you.